Hello, friends. Welcome to the Walk in Process podcast. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I am always so excited when you click on the episode to listen to the podcast. So it's amazing for me. This is the second season of the podcast. And on this episode, I would like to give a breakdown, a breakup, whatever, an update, a disclaimer on the things that have been happening in the middle while I was not recording the podcast and what you should expect going forward, and how you can also team up with me and help me as we continue to do this podcast thing. So, firstly, I must say it's good to be back. I feel so excited. It's so good to be back. So good to be back. I am really excited because I personally believe that when you want to do something, you should not do it anyhow. So, because I want to run a podcast and record a podcast episode doesn't mean I should just do it anyhow. So I try my best as much as possible to ensure that there's a little bit of perfection. I know that we are not all perfect and we can't all be perfect. I know that and I understand that, but I try my best as possible to put in a little bit of perfection so that at least listeners can have a semi-good listening experience, because we are getting there, but without a proper recording gear or proper recording instrument and tools, the audio can be somehow. But with what I have, I think I can still do my best to make it as bearable as possible. So on the case of the podcast, that was it for me. So I had to do the best I could. And some people have been reaching out to me, when is the next episode of the podcast coming out? Some people have threatened me. I received your threat. Thank you for threatening me. At least because of your threat now, see me, I'm doing it again. I appreciate your threat. So I actually stopped recording when we hit 500 plays. And if you can remember, I sent out a broadcast then just to celebrate the 500 plays, even though it was small, but come on, 500 plays. It's not about the plays, but it really inspired and encouraged me. And during the period of me not recording the podcast, we hit an additional 162 plays, making the total number of plays on the podcast now 662. So that means while I was not recording the podcast, 162 people actually played the podcast, or somebody played the podcast 162 times. In case you are that person, you played the podcast 162 times. Thank you so much. Thank you for inspiring me. And, this made me really encouraged to want to come back. So anytime I see the analytics of the podcast, I'm also encouraged to want to come back. Oh, I need to get into action with season 2. I need to start recording so that people can have something to listen to. And imagine if I hadn't stopped recording, I can only just imagine the amount of plays we will be having on the podcast by now. And that will help spread the word out so that people can know that, okay, there's actually something going on the Work in Process podcast that you should check out. So I would like to specially thank and appreciate everyone that has been very intentional with sharing the podcast, whether I ask them to or not. They've just been very intentional with sharing the podcast, and I am always happy when I see that. I'm always very excited. I'm always happy when I see that. And I'm not the kind of person that just wants you to share all the episode on the podcast. I'm not that kind of person. What I actually want is there a particular episode that you listened to on the podcast? Did you get value from it? Or did you think what you had on the podcast will help somebody? Why not just share it with that person? Share it on your platforms so that other people can get inspired by the same thing that inspired you. Because you don't know who what you are sharing can inspire, or who what you are sharing can motivate to start taking actions and keep working on their lives. So that's why I'm always excited when I see people share episodes of the podcast, especially people that have listened to it themselves. I'm always emphatic on that. You don't share what you have not listened to, because you don't know what you are sharing. So once you have listened to the podcast and you think that there is value here, or there's something worth listening to here, then you share it. It always gladdens my heart and I'm always excited. So I say a very special thank you to those set of intentional people. I see you and I want you to continue. Thank you so much. So the question now is, what should we be expecting in the second season. What should we be expecting? I'll say expect more. Expect more episode before the year runs out. Expect more. I'm going to try my best as much as possible to give out more episode before the year runs out. And as usual, I would like to share and add value by talking about the things I'm learning, practicing, and working on to become a better person. And then from there, we can also pick which of the ideas and concepts that I'm going to be sharing on, which of those ideas and concepts connect with you, and hopefully you also put them into practice, and then they also begin to generate results in your life. Because it's not just enough to listen to an idea, it's not just enough to hear a concept. You have to practice them to get the results. I've been saying this on the podcast for several months now. Practice is what brings the result. So what I'll be doing on the podcast going forward, especially this season, is sharing a lot about my own process, sharing a lot about what I'm working on, what I'm working with, what I'm going through, and what I've learned from it. And then these are the results that I have gathered from the practice I have implemented, and that is how I can also help inspire other people to want to practice the thing I've practiced so they can also receive the result I have received. And based on request and demand of some amazing subscribers, because when we actually stopped recording, we had about 31, 32 subscribers on Spotify. And by the time I'll check the analytics, we are having 48 subscribers now. If I'm right, 48 subscribers now, or 40 something, but I think 48 subscribers. I'm very sure of that, 48 subscribers. And based on the demands of some of those amazing subscribers, they said they want me to increase the time on each episode of the podcast. And I'm actually going to consider that because I think it's amazing. It would help you understand the details and the passion of the concept and ideas and the tips that I'm going to be sharing about. So rather than me just giving you a fire point, action point, you're going to see the details and the actual pathway for you to actually implement and practice this concept and ideas that I'm going to be sharing about. But it's not going to be 1 hour, 2 hours long podcast, something like that. It's just going to be around 10, 15 minutes, something that you can also listen to very quickly, but it's going to be as detailed as possible because I still believe in getting information very fast so you can implement them as quick as possible. And I will also try my best as much as possible to release an episode once a week. Perfect or not, I'm going to release an episode. So I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know what day it's going to be. Just keep checking the page, keep checking it out. An episode can drop anytime as I'm inspired. I can just want to record and share on something that really inspired me during the week. So it can be 2 episodes, it can be 3 episodes in a week, but at least once a week there's going to be an episode on the podcast. And also for those of you that are not aware, the Daily Becoming newsletter still continues. You can join the over 60 plus subscribers to get a mail weekly. It's amazing because while I was not recording the podcast, I really didn't, even though I wanted to return back to recording the podcast on time, the newsletter actually helped me to augment for that season and for that phase. So I was still in contact with my community. I was still reaching out to people. People were still in contact with me. In fact, I made a post on a newsletter called My Next Move. And on My Next Move, I actually detailed that I was not going to be recording podcasts for some months because of this and that. And it made me create a kind of community that everybody was involved. So as we know, change is constant. Change doesn't change. We're always going to be evolving, and everything we do is always going to be evolving. So this is just a reminder. There is nothing new anywhere. There are no new concepts anywhere. There are no new ideas anywhere. And especially when it comes to maximizing your life, purpose, and productivity, I've come to realize that there's nothing new anywhere. We are all just saying the same thing. We are all just saying the same thing several years ago. So if you check it down from the days of Dale Carnegie, John C. Maxwell, Brian Tracy, and then you come to people like Ali Abdaal, Jay Shetty, Ed Milet, there's really nothing new. They are just sharing the same concepts, the same ideas, and the same truth, but with different presentation mechanisms. And that is also what I'm doing. And realizing that is a very big deal for me. So the main thing is taking actions. It's not just listening, it's not just hearing. In fact, what I'm saying now, you've heard it before. Take action. Take action. What have you heard? What can you do? What can you do with what you have heard? So taking action is what would generate results. So another way I think you can take action is actually by listening to me and probably some other people, maybe by hearing us present these old truths, which I would not even like to call old, these truths in a different way. It can inspire you in another way to take action. So that is what I would like to encourage you to do as a subscriber that I'm passionate about. And here is a little side note. I want to actually scale. I want to improve and expand the reach of the podcast. I really want to. And I've gotten several advices. A lot of people have reached out. They say TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, Instagram Live, YouTube Shorts, Masterminds, so that you can generate more people in the community and all. I've actually not given it a deep thought, but I know deep down inside that I want to scale, I want to improve, I need to make the podcast reach a lot more people, because only God knows how many people you can inspire and influence. So let me put myself out there so I can keep myself, so you people can keep me accountable. So by always reminding me, you can always send me a message on Instagram or send me a mail. And if you also like to team up with me, send me a DM on Instagram, send me a mail. I'll be glad to work with you. I'll be glad to team up with you, and we can together influence more and more and more people. So that is it. So, all right, for the last time, we are together on this journey. So stay positive and be encouraged. It's still a work in process. Bye for now. So all the links of everything I've mentioned would be in the description, so you can always check it out. I'll say again, remember, stay positive and be encouraged. Bye.